The Brothers Karamazov, Book 5, Chapter 2. Alyosha, upon leaving Madame Holokov's and the bookend conversations that he had with her in the previous chapter, the middle of the sandwich, two conversations with Lise, one conversation with Lise about two topics, chiefly about the officer's family and the poor little boy and the disabled girl and the wife who has too many responsibilities, and then that moves into the second part of their conversation about their own love and their future, and Alyosha's present dismay at the state of his family and the impending death of Father Zosima. He leaves Madame Holokov's to go to find Dmitri. And this is significant because it is perhaps a sneak preview, a foreshadowing of what he is going to do with his life. He would rather go to the monastery and be with Zosima as he dies. He would rather run away from the problems of the world to a safe place where beauty and love and truth are to exist, and to be in the presence of Zosima and all the wisdom of his dying words. But Zosima doesn't need Alyosha. The world needs Alyosha. His family needs Alyosha. And so he chooses the harder path, the selfless path, the path of going out and fighting the battle rather than staying safe at home. And so he does. And so he goes to where he's previously met Dmitri, but instead of finding Dmitri at home or lying in wait, still looking for Grushenka, instead he overhears Smerdyakov flirting with a girl and playing a guitar and singing in a terrible falsetto voice, terrible lyrics to try to impress this girl. And so again, I think there's a contrast being set up with the previous chapter. What happened in the previous chapter? Alyosha and Lise first had a selfless conversation about how to best help this officer and how to get the 200 rubles into his hand, how to give money, and at the same time, how to humanize and not humiliate the man as they give him money. How do they communicate that this officer is every bit the person that they are? No, in fact, Alyosha says, how do I both give the man his money and supply for his needs in his time of want, but not only that, make the person even better than me, on a better footing than me, not just equal footing. And then they have a semi-serious but still giggly relationship about their future. That is quite a contrast to Smerdyakov's conversation with this young girl, this maid, daughter maid, who Smerdyakov is flirting with. What does their conversation revolve around? Well, Smerdyakov is critical of everyone. He's critical of Ivan because Ivan called him a name. He's critical of Dmitri because he squanders wealth. He is smarter than Dmitri. He's critical of Russia. He's critical of any old-fashioned ideals. This girl has this sort of newspaper headline, superficial idea of romantic European ideals. And she says, oh, how beautiful, how cool, how grand it would be to watch a duel. Two young officers shooting each other over one girl. Isn't that beautiful or romantic? And so this conversation between Smerdyakov and this young lady is, I think, a parody, a dumb version of the real conversation between Alyosha and Lise. Not that Alyosha and Lise are perfect, but their conversation centers around service and love to the officer's family and the love they have for each other and the hope they have in their future together. Smerdyakov and this young lady's conversation just center on tearing down, cutting down, meanness, bitterness, ugliness, anti-Russian propositions, anti-Russian sentiments. Then, accidentally, Alyosha sneezes, gives up his hiding position, so he walks to them, and he now discusses with Smerdyakov about the whereabouts of Dmitri. Interestingly, I think we've got two brothers, or maybe at the very least a half-brother here, and they're conversing about a third brother. And so Alyosha asks Smerdyakov, where is Dmitri? Have you seen him? And Smerdyakov quotes the Bible by saying, am I my brother's keeper? Exactly what happens after Cain slays Abel, after one brother kills another brother. And why did Cain slay Abel? Because Cain was jealous that Abel's sacrifice to God was approved of, and his was not. And so out of jealousy and out of a God-hating rage, Cain killed Abel. And so now Smerdyakov quotes, probably knowingly, he quotes a biblical allusion with two brothers slaying each other. And so Smerdyakov, all he knows, and this drives much of the action forward of the next three books, all he knows is that Ivan has invited Dmitri to a lunch at the tavern, and so perhaps, he doesn't know, perhaps Dmitri and Ivan are at the tavern right now. And so Alyosha is worried because Dmitri is so chaotic. He just has this foreboding feeling that something, I don't know what, but something terrible is going to happen. So Alyosha is worried about Dmitri, and he's going to go track him down. Now, before we end, I want to point out something, that there are four brothers. There's four Karamazov brothers, and the conversation in this chapter was between Alyosha and Smerdyakov. And so I think that if you put all four brothers on a plane or a spectrum, here's what you have. You have Alyosha on the loving Christian right side of the spectrum, and Smerdyakov on the hateful, bitter, jerky, mean, Antichrist side of the spectrum. He's on the left. And so they represent two extremes. Between Smerdyakov's left atheist extreme, anti-Russian extreme, and the right, the Christian love extreme exemplified by Alyosha, in between those two extremes, you have our other two brothers, Dmitri and Ivan. And Dmitri and Ivan are both conflicted in nature, but conflicted for different reasons. Dmitri wants to be moral, wants to be a good person, but he's a sensualist, and so his nature is one of conflict. This day running toward Alyosha's extreme. This day being overcome by Smerdyakov's extreme, more of a lust of the flesh reason why. Ivan, however, is also in the middle of Smerdyakov and Alyosha, because of his intellectual dissonance. On the one hand, he knows morality is important, but on the other hand, there is no such thing as morality or ethics without God. And so both Dmitri and Ivan are conflicted for different reasons, situated between the two bookends of the two ends of the spectrum, morally and theistically speaking in this chapter. So I think it's interesting that we have that kind of the two extremes conversing about the center as far as the Karamazov brothers, leading, of course, to a three long, deep chapters with Ivan and Alyosha conversing coming up.